Good evening, councillors, members of the public, officers. I can confirm that the meeting is being live streamed to YouTube. So, Councillor Forojewski, Madam Mayor, you may commence proceedings.
Thank you, Fiona. Members, good evening and a warm welcome to everyone, including those joining in at home. Welcome to this most extraordinary meeting in these extraordinary times. These are unprecedented times. We face diverse and difficult challenges in the future. In a short period of time, we have all had to make sacrifices, find new ways of working, adapt quickly to change, and learn to live and communicate in a modern digital world. However, I expect even under these circumstances, goodwill, good spirit remain, and that members' code of conduct is upheld, and as always, the very highest standard of professionalism is adhered to, as we have come to expect as my time as Mayor. We are supported this evening by Tom Horwood, the Chief Executive, Strategic Directors, Graham Clark and Annie Wrighton, Robin Taylor, Head of Governance, and Daniel Bainbridge, Borough Solicitor. Members, if you wish to speak, use the raise hand feature in Zoom, but remember to remove it afterwards. Remain muted throughout, except when speaking. Get into good habits. Imagine you're actually in the chamber using the microphone system there. If you lose connection, rejoin as soon as possible. If the live stream to YouTube fails, we will pause until re-established. And for practical reasons this evening, I would like to move that Council PR 21.1 is suspended for this meeting. So you can remain seated and you don't have to stand. So members, please can you unmute to give verbal assent to suspending PR 21.1?
Agreed.
Thank you. I'd like to move now to item number 2. That's apologies for absence. Can I go to Mr. Robin Taylor, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have received apologies from councillors Joan Hegan and Kevin Denis.
Thank you, Robin. I'd now like to move to item number 3, which is Mayor's announcements. But before I commence, can I ask my chaplain, the Reverend Ian Maslin, to hold a 1-minute silence for those who have lost their lives to coronavirus, to their friends and family, and our thoughts all for those in the front line and the key workers throughout, followed by a few words about the current situation. Now, please hand over to the Reverend, my chaplain, Ian Maslin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you on this last occasion for myself, but I've got to say it's been an absolute privilege to be part of, in some small way, part of your meeting. So I must thank you all, every one of you, for that. We're meeting in a very different way this time, obviously because of the pandemic. That's affected so many people. Unfortunately, it doesn't look as if it's going to go away soon, which means that we have to continue helping our community as best we can in these unusual circumstances. I'll give you just a very quick example. I came in a little late to the meeting this evening because I was at my church at St. Peter's in Hascombe, where I sat down with a young traveller gentleman who was crying his eyes out. He's absolutely suicidal about this situation because he can't see his family. There are thousands and thousands of families around the world, around the country rather, who are in the same situation. I must thank you for your efforts to keep this community going during this unusual time. So I'm going to say a prayer now, and then we'll hold a minute's silence. This is particularly a prayer for you. Almighty God, we pray for those who exercise authority in government, and especially in this place where we live. Grant that they may be upright in character and wise in judgment, seeking first and foremost the good of the community, not their own advantage, and so direct and strengthen them in all their works and planning, that they may further your will among us, for the glory of your name. Amen. And now we'll just take a few moments to remember perhaps friends and family who've been affected by this pandemic, but the people in your community. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now I'm going to finish with a prayer that I prayed the very first time I met you all. It's a prayer for the Queen's Majesty. O Lord, our Heavenly Father, high and mighty, King of kings, Lord of lords, the only ruler of princes, who dost from thy throne behold all the dwellers upon earth. Most heartily we beseech thee with thy favour to behold our most gracious sovereign lady, Queen Elizabeth, and so replenish her with the grace of thy Holy Spirit, that she may always incline to thy will and walk in thy way. Endue her plenteously with heavenly gifts, grant her in health and wealth long to live, strengthen her that she may vanquish and overcome all her enemies, and finally, after this life, she may attain everlasting joy and felicity. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Ian, before we go on, in front of everybody, I would just like to pay a tribute to you. No words can express my gratitude for your dignity, your goodwill, your support. You've been my rock. And I couldn't have got through this year without you. So thank you. And I do have a small gift and a card for you. Let me just hang on. There we go. There's your gift.
Thank you.
And here's your card. And they will be delivered to you shortly. But again, we are lucky to have you and retain you in this wonderful borough of Waverly. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's been my privilege and my genuine pleasure. So thank you.
I'll continue. Once again, I would like to express my thanks and appreciation to my consort Stefan, to my sons Alex and Jan, and to my family and friends who have supported me throughout. To Main Chance, my chosen charity, to my fellow Surrey mayors, and to my deputy, Councillor Penny Marriott. I would like to publicly pay tribute to Waverley's staff who have gone above and beyond, to Henry Askerley and to my PA Alison. Both of you were simply brilliant, and to Robin Taylor and Democratic Services team. In order to save time, you will have received a thank you email including a short video of my time in office. Instead, I would like to make this time about you, not about me. This evening, I want to acknowledge, recognise and show appreciation to just a few of the tens of thousands out there who I met throughout my mayoral year, not just for their efforts during the pandemic, but before, during and after. Outstanding, unsung heroes, amazing, incredible people doing amazing, incredible things. I would like to present Waverley Borough Council Community Champion Certificates of Appreciation. in recognition of your courage, strength, determination and goodwill. Your contribution and commitment to your community has been outstanding. There will also be a small financial gift that was taken from the Mayor's budget that I hadn't used. I would now like to move to presenting these certificates. I really think at a time like this, where there are so many people doing so much, it's not about us, it's about the people out there, day in, day out, who work selflessly, tirelessly, and who don't want to be thanked. But I'm going to take this opportunity to thank a cross-section of many, many heroes that we have out there. I'd like to start with Andrea Bamford, a heart of the Cranley community. Cranley rocks, Cranley in bloom, just a really, really good person, good-willed, good-natured, out there, a true unsung hero. Glebeland School, some of the students at Glebeland School actually made PPE equipment during the crisis. Absolutely incredible. And again, they have some amazing students, amazing teachers doing amazing things. Cranley Rotary. I hope that through my mayoral year, we have made some breakthroughs, not just here in the UK, but nationally as well. And there'll be more about that in the future. Rod Wild from the Royal British Legion works tirelessly, selflessly, doing all sorts of good things for remembrance servicing. He takes hours and hours and hours to actually prepare, orchestrate and do such a great job to acknowledge all our other heroes from wars gone by. To Nabil Asir from the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, I thought it was important to mention these because they're a peace-loving community here in the very heart of our borough in Tilford. They have been extremely helpful, supportive, doing all sorts of work right across the borough and further afield, not just through the pandemic, but before and after as well. So I'd like to appreciate them. To Hayley Roberts, a girl after my own heart, just set up the Secret Garden Sanctuary. I wish you all the very best with it, and I know times are difficult, but they will get better. And from what I've heard, you've got a lot of support and you should do really, really well. Henry. Oh, Henry has been inspirational. He truly has. A young member of our staff at Waverly. He's just the most genuine guy. Whatever he's going to do in life, he's going to do really, really well. Very, very supportive, very humble, very honest. And it was an absolute pleasure working with you, Henry. And now to Jessica. Jessica Wicks, I'm sure this comes as a surprise, but it shouldn't, because you've been happy, buoyant, caring, loving, and you have done just the most amazing things for so many young people. You have represented your age bracket, your gender, everything beautifully, and there's so many people I know love you dearly because of all the work that you have done, and they put their trust in you. You are absolutely inspirational. Wendy Gibson, street champion, well done. You were nominated by so many people. I actually used social media to ask people who they would like to nominate, and Wendy's name came up time and time again. So obviously you're very, very appreciated. And I know that you didn't want to be thanked, but I'm thanking you. So well done, Wendy. Another one whose name came up time and time again, Janet Wallace from the Baptist Church in Cranley. And again, your name came up time and time again. And I know you're very much missed by a lot of the people that you were serving. And finally, oh, these guys are just absolutely brilliant. What they have been doing throughout the pandemic is absolutely nobody's business. And I know that they've just been doing the most amazing work. They're not going to say too much about it now, but I hope in the future you will get to find out everything they've done for this community. Again, in the past, in the future, and right through this pandemic. Our very own Cranley Lions. And to Jamie and to all of you, it's been my pleasure and my delight to have spent time working with you and getting to know you better. And I'm sure our paths will cross several times in the future. Never before has the role of mayor been so relevant, a figurehead to bring communities together, underpinning the continuing support of many as possible who are out there working day in and day out for the benefit of others. My focus as mayor was not about fundraising, but about raising awareness. Awareness of subjects hard to talk about, awareness of our own vulnerability and those around us. Never before has it been more important to be tolerant, patient, gentle on ourselves and each other. It was about networking, bringing people and organisations together to find common ground. My mental health networking event will go ahead at some point in the near future, and my sponsored walk. And I'd like to thank Councillor Christine Howard, and I hope we can pick up from where we left off. And what else can I say? I didn't cry. I've got the tissues here already. Me being that sentimental creature that I am, I thought I'd burst into tears, but I haven't. So I'm going to conclude by saying, these are difficult times, but we will get through it, and we'll get through it together. We've got this far, and we've done so far, we've done really, really well. We have all made sacrifices. We have all lost what a few weeks ago was normal. In these uncertain times, it's time to resume some sort of normality and get on with the business of running council, delivering essential services and supporting our residents. It's time for me to return to the backbenches, and as I do, I will do a better person, a more enriched person for my experience. Therefore, I wish my successor all the very best, and to each and every one of you, stay safe, stay well, be tolerant, be kind, keep talking, and above all, be gentle on yourself and each other. Thank you for having faith in me. It's been an honour and a privilege to serve you. Thank you. I would now like to move to item number 4, and that's the election of mayor for 2021.
Madam Mayor, with your indulgence.
I was going to say, if I may, thank you, I call for nominations for the election of mayor for the council year 2020 to 21. Councillor Ward.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I originally wrote I rise, but since I don't have to rise, I would like to propose Councillor Dr. Penny Marriott as our next mayor. Although born in England, Councillor Marriott, to whom I shall henceforth refer to as Penny, as there are confusingly 2 Councillor Dr. Marriotts on the council at the moment, although born in England, spent her early years in Swansea, which explains the occasional appearance of a Welsh accent, to the great confusion of many people with whom she speaks. She studied physics and mathematics at Manchester University and Imperial College, after which she taught in a number of schools and colleges, but her prime interest has always been astrophysics, a subject well beyond me and most others. Penny is a relative newcomer to Waverly, having only lived in Farnham for 45 years. But during that time, she has been very active, both politically as a town and borough councillor and in the wider community. As such, Penny has been chair of the North West Farnham Residents Association for 10 years, a trustee of the Farnham Victoria Gardens, formerly the swimming baths, and eventually becoming their chair. She is passionate about international cooperation, which she believes can be fostered by town twinning, and is therefore quite natural that she should join the Farnham Andernach Friendship Association, and as you might have guessed, she soon became their chairman as well. She has a keen interest in youth, by hearing their voices and making the world a better place for them to inherit. She originally joined her local PTA when her children were at school, and that was some time back, and I've erased the date to save embarrassment, and later became one of the first parent governors at St Andrew's School, much to the suspicion of the local rector. This is her second stint as a Waverley Borough Council, And during her time as a Farnham Town Councillor, she served as Mayor for 2002 and 2003, and so is well used to representing the town and also controlling a noisy council. A little known fact about Penny is that she has also been a part-time international sporting coach, imparting the elements of velocity and trajectory by means of physics tuition to a keen student who later won gold, claiming the triple crown of Paralympic, European and world champion in boccia. I can think of no one more fitting to be our mayor, and I'm proud to be the one asked to propose her as such. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Do you have a seconder?
Madam Mayor, pleased to second. If I may, Madam Mayor, before I proceed to my brief words in support of the nomination, may I just quickly offer my thanks to you for your work and service over the last year, a year that I think most would agree has been like no other in living memory, so thank you. It is my absolute pleasure to second the nomination of Councillor Penny Marriott for the office of Mayor of Waverly. The leader has eloquently described the worthiness of the nominee for the office, and I would like to fully and wholeheartedly endorse those words. Every new mayor is unique and brings with them their unique personality and direction to the role. And I know Councillor Marriott is eager to start her work in this role, and I, for one, am excited to see the direction that she will take. Back in the midst of time, when we all used to see each other in person, I recall speaking with Penny in the members' room on a few occasions, and I am certain that helping young people, education, compassion, inclusivity and engagement will be at the core of her style as mayor. And I, for one, welcome that, and I know I speak for many of my colleagues in expressing that view. I know, pending the outcome of the next item on the agenda, that you will also have the full support of the new Deputy Mayor, and I predict that Waverley will have an excellent new mayoral team. Madam Mayor, I commend the nomination of Councillor Penny Marriott to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Follows. Are there any other nominations? Therefore, I hereby declare Councillor Penny Marriott as the new Mayor of Waverley.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, my time is done now.
May we check before we continue? I've got the webcast feed on, the YouTube feed, and it appears to have been breaking up a lot from, I've hardly been able to watch anything on that. Can we ask, please, and it's gone off and come back again, and can we ask whether it's working properly before we do the new Madam Mayor's introduction and speech? Thank you. Can we just check with.
Of course, Councillor Hyman. Fiona, who's in our control room, or Robin Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you just bear with me one moment and I'll check.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I may as well, I'm in another room in the Berries, and Councillor Hyman has been coming through loud and clear, just as the rest of you have as well.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, you missed the point. It's the YouTube webcast that's the problem, not me or you.
Yeah, excuse me, Madam Mayor, certainly here, the YouTube signal is stable. I have it on a laptop in front of me as well. So hopefully that's just where you are, but obviously we'll continue to monitor that throughout the evening.
And I have one of the IT team monitoring it certainly.
Yep, so I don't know if you heard that my colleague in IT also has a member of the team monitoring it elsewhere as well. So obviously if we get further news that there's any disruption, Madam Mayor, then clearly we'll report that back and do something about that. So hopefully it's just an issue for where Councillor Hyman is.
Right. I don't think that's the case, but it's working fine now, but hasn't been for the past 10 minutes. Okay.
That's fine. That's
Thanks.
fine. I think we've got assurances that it's working okay. So now I think it's over to our new Mayor to continue at proceedings. But thank you all. The pleasure's been all mine. Over to you, Councillor Penny Marriott. Congratulations.
So if I may ask Councillor Marriott to please read out the Declaration of Acceptance of Office.
I, Dr. Penny Marriott, having been elected to the office of Mayor for the Borough of Waverley, hereby declare that I take it upon myself that I will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the code as to the conduct which is expected of members of Waverly Borough Council in the performance of my functions in that office. Okay, oh, nice. Yeah.
There you go. Just sign it, show it.
Right. Show it. Right. This I don't know if it's quite correct for a member of the family to sign it as a witness, but there we are. I've signed it. Right. May I ask for nominations for the office of Deputy Mayor?
Madam Mayor, I would like to propose Councillor John Rivini for the office of Mayor, if I may read my statement.
You may.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, it's my honour to nominate my friend and colleague, Councillor John Rivini, for the office of Deputy Mayor of Waverly. I think it's fair to say that it's rare to meet anyone who can, hand on heart, say that public service is, in one form or another, been their life. John is one of those people. Councillor Rivini returns to this council and to Hazelmere Town Council in 2019, but John has a long record of service to Waverley and to parishes within the borough, including time as a portfolio holder covering car parks, community safety and youth services, also as a member and then chairman of Whitley Parish. He is, of course, also the incumbent mayor of Hazelmere. Outside of his work as a councillor, John joined the police in 1972 and served with the force here in Waverley for many years. And one of his many initiatives during that time was setting up neighbourhood watch programmes across the borough, which still exist today. As attested by some of John's colleagues, and to demonstrate how very small a world it is, I actually do work with one of John's former colleagues in my current day job. Integrity, hard work and community service are at the core of everything John does. Now, during COVID-19, John has served his community as Mayor of Hazelmere, and that's led, and he's led that council and community through this period. And while leading a council is never easy, the true tests of leadership often come in times of trouble for the community, and in this case, for the nation. John has met those challenges head on, and he has been the community leader that the times have demanded. Despite being in isolation, the Mayor of Hazelmere has been the unifying figure that people needed, visible and hardworking. Now, whether that's been stepping into the unknown that is chairing council sessions online, as the new mayor will now have that pleasure, or whether it's working alongside volunteers as part of Hazelmere Health, or working with his colleagues to deliver the community store in Hazelmere, and even managing to keep the neighbourhood plan consultations going, John has been at the centre and led from the front. Now, finally, I know John wouldn't have this any other way, and I must mention Jackie, who will certainly be sharing in the work to come. I do so not just for all that she has done in supporting John's mayoral year in Hazelmere, but for all she does in the Waverley community in her own right, and has done for longer than a gentleman would ever state in a speech in public. I am certain that John and Jackie will be an excellent support to Penny and Peter over this year, and I feel confident that whatever else this year might throw at us, and boy has it been a year so far, Waverley will be in good hands. Congratulations, Madam Mayor, and I commend the nomination of Councillor John Rivini to Council, and I believe I have a seconder.
Is there a seconder?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very pleased to second the nomination of John Rivini for the position of Deputy Mayor at Waverley. And congratulations on your appointment, Madam Mayor, as the new Mayor. Can I say quickly, for Jerry Hyman's benefit, there's definitely internet connection problems in Farnham today, and I'm worried about being cut off, so I apologise in advance if that actually happens. In terms of nominating John, actually, one thing I like to do when I'm asked to do a speech like this is call up the person involved and ask them for an amusing, mildly amusing story about themselves to show there's someone with a sense of humour who isn't too pompous. So I did that with John, actually. And he gave me a couple of stories from his time in the police service. He was 43 years a policeman. And the one I'm going to talk about is when he was actually sent up north to actually help police the miners' strike with many other policemen. And early on in that strike, John was put in charge of a fleet of transit vans, which were taking a large number of policemen to the site. And the vans needed refuelling, so he got hold of the key to the fuel pump from the local policeman who was in charge of it, and fueled up the vans, and off they set towards the site. And after about a mile, they all broke down. And it turned out the reason for that was he'd been given the keys to the diesel pump, whereas the vans were all petrol-given vans. So he was left with 100 policemen, or more than 100 policemen urgently required at the site, stuck on the side of the road. And he was given the nickname by all his police colleagues of Scargill's friend. And they even made up a badge for him entitled Scargill's friend, which he had the good nature to wear during the whole time of the strike. He didn't actually wear it when he was on duty at the strike. I asked him that. He said it didn't think it was appropriate. But he might have had a better experience if he had done, actually, because it was quite a contentious strike, as we all remember. So that's how John finished up with the name Scargill's friend. And interestingly enough, actually, it occurred to me after I'd been speaking to John that I hadn't heard of Arthur Scargill for quite a while. So I Googled and discovered he's still very much alive. He's 82 years old, and he runs a party which he set up himself called the Socialist Labour Party, who were initially quite successful in 1999 when he set it up. They got 50,000 votes at the election then, but sadly last year they were down to about 500 votes nationally, although they still have a few councillors actually. They had a couple of defectors from the Labour Party, I think it's Hartlepool. So that's enough about Arthur Scargill. People begin to think I'm proposing Arthur to be Deputy Mayor at Waverly, which might be fun, but it's never going to happen. So coming back to John Rivini, Paul Follis has very adequately described all Paul's qualities and all John's qualities and why he would make an excellent mayor. The one thing I did was call up one of the independent councillors at Hazelmere and ask how John was regarded by all the non-party members at Hazelmere. And he's very highly regarded as a very experienced councillor and a real champion of Hazelmere. And I was told by that councillor he'll make an excellent deputy mayor at Waverly, highly recommended. So I'm very happy to also highly recommend John Rivini for the position of deputy mayor at Waverly. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other, anyone else wishing to speak? I think Councillor Milliner was going to say something.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Let me begin by adding my congratulations on your own election as Mayor for the coming council year, together with the hope you'll be able to carry out the normal mayoral duties before too long. As a fellow resident of Hazelmere, it gives me great pleasure to congratulate Councillor John Rivini his election as Deputy Mayor of Waverly. Although he was born many miles away in Woking, he's been a Hazelmere man certainly for 20 years as resident and strongly connected before that, and has indeed had a strong interest in the local community. He was a Waverley councillor from 2003 to 2007, and as we've heard, on being elected to Hazelmere Town Council last May, has served as Town Mayor and is generally regarded as a very diligent and respected incumbent in that role. I know that he and Jackie have greatly enjoyed their mayoral stint until coronavirus got in the way in March, and I am very sure that this experience will stand them in good stead in their Waverley responsibilities. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mulliner. Are there any other nominations? No? Does any member of the council wish to vote against or abstain on the nomination of Councillor John Rivini as Deputy Mayor? Otherwise, the motion is carried. Yes. I hereby declare Councillor John Rivini as the new Deputy Mayor of Waverley. Welcome, John.
Councillor Rivini, please read out the Declaration of Acceptance of Office.
Thank you. I, John Rivini, having been elected to the office of Deputy Mayor for the Borough of Waverley, hereby declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. I undertake to observe the code as to the conduct which is expected of members of Waverley Borough Council in the performance of my functions in that office. Hopefully you can all see that or buy it. It's been witnessed by Jackie, so it has now been signed. Thank you very much for the honour and privilege.
We now move to the vote of thanks to the retiring mayor. Which is going to be moved by Councillor Carol Coburn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I hope you can all hear me. And can I add my congratulations to you and to wish you and Peter all the very best for a lovely year next year when it eventually starts properly, as I'm sure it will. Firstly, members, I must apologise. Just over a year ago, in those heady pre-virus days,
oh, she's frozen. Is it on yours as well?
She's not. Yeah, she's definitely frozen.
We've gone.
There she is.
Well, there we are.
Right, so I don't know what happened then, but anyway, I hope Mary didn't miss the good bit. What I'm saying, Mary, is that you have been an absolutely outstanding mayor and stunning. And I am not just talking about those hats, which, as we've all known over the year, have been your very own bespoke method of social distancing. From the moment you accepted the badge of office with your usual modesty, both you and the chain shone. In the council chamber, you chaired the meetings with patience, humour, and above all, fairness, always ensuring that all members would be heard. When as children we would try to shout each other down, my mother would always say, "Empty vessels make the most noise." We didn't really understand the phrase, but we knew we had to pipe down, stop shouting, and listen to each other. Thank you, Mary, for underlining my mother's point that those with the loudest voices or the most to say are not necessarily the wisest, and for reminding us that we are here to listen to a range of views with politeness and respect. But it's not just members who have appreciated your wisdom, your counsel, and your generosity of spirit. Officers have felt valued and supported throughout your mayoral year too. You have been a joy to work with, and your unstinting hard work on behalf of the borough has been inspiring. Our motto celebrates bringing town and countryside together, but it is equally important for officers and members to be united in a common purpose if the borough is truly to flourish. Mary, you have inspired us all. Which brings me to the more public part of your year. You carried out every duty as though it were your first, always punctual, always prepared, always interested. You turned routine AGMs into a celebration of the work of every charity and every voluntary organisation you visited. You made so many special people in the borough feel special, and you have left behind memories that they would cherish for many years to come. Our paths crossed several times during your year in office, and I was struck by your sensitivity and your warmth. You instinctively knew when it was time to reach out a hand to the lonely or the bereaved, or to urge on the child who was struggling with friendships and low esteem. And you flirted outrageously with elderly war veterans. There have been many smiles, a few tears, and a great deal of laughter. However, it's not been all tea and cake. You've also worked tirelessly on your own fundraising and on raising the profile of causes dear to you. You've already mentioned the main sanctuary, which not only rescues abandoned horses, but which seeks to bring them together with some very special children in our community. That charity has benefited from your hard work, as have charities dealing with male mental health and male suicide. As soon as lockdown occurred, you rolled up your sleeves to help those in need and to boost the morale of local volunteer groups. You know, Mary, none of us was surprised. In brief, Mary, you have given us all a masterclass in service. You have been a terrific ambassador for Waverly Borough Council, and every single one of us owes you a great deal. A 5-year-old boy once told me authoritatively that a mayor thanks people. He was right. And you have expressed our collective gratitude to all those unsung heroes across the borough who selflessly seek to improve the life of others. And you have done so with unfailing charm, sincerity, and dignity. The whole borough will remember your outstanding service for many years to come. And now it is our turn to thank you. Thank you, Councillor Forashevsky, for all you have achieved on our behalf in your outstanding mayoral year. Thank you for your humour, your honesty, your humility, and your humanity. And of course, thank you for those hats. And could I ask us now perhaps all to unmute and give Mary the round of applause that she so justly deserves.
Your plan.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. How does one follow such eloquence? It was a very interesting time, just over a year ago, when we came to power and had a very interesting decision to make. And it is to Mary's credit that we unhesitatingly agreed that although of a different party, the new administration was really confident and very happy that she should be our mayor. She has not disappointed. She has more than achieved the many things that we would achieve, and she has clearly exhibited those qualities for which we were proud that she would be elected. Fairness, impartiality, intelligence, as well as a bit of glamour, which never goes down badly on the mayoral platform. Our confidence was certainly not misplaced, and I will not go on at length because we have a lot to get through, but I am really, really pleased to be able to say to her, thank you, Mary, by seconding this vote of thanks from the council. Thank you, Mary.
Are there any other speakers? Well, actually, there is another speaker. It's me. I've been working very closely alongside, oh, sorry. Yes, I've been working very closely alongside Mary for the last year, and she's been kind and friendly and outgoing, but basically a great help to me. And so I would like to say thank you on my behalf, just to say it was great being with you. Right, thank you. Does any member wish to vote against or abstain? Otherwise, the motion is carried. I don't know which motion that actually was, but I think vote of thanks. Can I confirm the minutes? These I moved on to item 7. Can I confirm the minutes of the council meeting which took place on the 18th of February 2020? Could you unmute and say agreed.
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 I will sign these later. Number 8, declarations of interest from members. Robin, are there any declarations of interest?
None received in advance, Madam Mayor.
Are there any declarations of interest by members? No? It comes to the point where I say my piece. I don't think that anything can adequately prepare one for becoming mayor in the middle of a global pandemic. This is a time of change, which can make people anxious and fearful. And I'm sure that we at Waverly will try our best to be ready and prepared to help people while they suffer from the fallout of this terrible disease. This is a time of change. Changes have happened, changes will happen, and changes are happening right now. It is hard to think that at Christmas, very few of us were aware of what was going to happen next, because now times have changed and they will not, there's no way the world will change back to the way it was before. It is going to be extremely hard going, not only now while we're in the midst of it all, but in the future, because change is going to continue to happen. Because of the virus, behavior has changed. The behavior that we try and move, be alongside people, and we can't touch them. It means that when horrible things happen, and horrible things do, because this is a very cruel virus, there is nothing that we can do to stop it happening. The only thing that we can do is follow the government guidelines and remain distant from people, which is completely the opposite of your natural instinct. It changes your attitude to life, to the future. It changes the way things are done. As this shows tonight, we have to find ways of trying to maintain the work that the council has to do and the work that other people have to do. And therefore, we have to change the way we do things. Waverly officers have been remarkable. They have really stepped up to the plate. When you think that during this pandemic, there was no problem that the rubbish was collected. There was no problem that, maybe not quite as often, no problem that to get things cleared up and tidied if you needed to. And the big job that they have done is to make this all possible tonight. You would have thought, right, even 2, 3 or 4 weeks ago, that this was going to be possible. To get a whole load of councillors who've never used Zoom before, many people haven't used Zoom up until, who used it before have not used Zoom in these sort of numbers. We have at this meeting 57 councillors and 6 or 7 officers. So that is a lot of people to manage. And I think that, in fact, when I was thinking about tonight, that's the thing that most worried me, that everything you'd be able to move and say things that were necessary to say, and show people that we are actually carrying on with business as usual. Even though the mayor making was not the way it would normally be, I think we got through the small parts of it definitely, as we needed to do. But not only are things happening at the moment, changes happening at the moment, changes will continue to happen because of the way that the economy has been affected, because of the non-suppression of the numbers. Things will continue to be affected way into the future. It will take many years to get over this. This isn't the first pandemic that the world has seen. I remember watching history program by Michael Woods, and he was talking about a village in which 2/3 of the people died. And then he sort of, in the historian's way, moved straight on to 3 centuries later, everything was back to normal. Well, I'm hoping it won't take us that long, and it certainly won't hopefully take that long. But that change that is going to occur is going to last many years into the future, and it will affect everybody. Change is not a bad thing. You know, change makes people anxious and fearful and afraid of what will happen next, because you can't plan for what will happen next. And this is what the job of Waverly will be for the next year or two, is to try and make these changes that are going to be necessary as painless as possible for people. And I'm sure they're up to the job. There is somehow, when you're looking at change, it isn't always a bad thing. The things that happen aren't always as bad as you fear they will be. And sometimes, as in a lot of cases, if you look back to the good old days, they aren't the good old days. There are things that needed change. And the Black Lives Matter movement sort of underlines just one of them. I have a statement here that I want to make on behalf of Waverly, which will hopefully show what we think about. We want to stand with people in the Black community. As community leaders, we oppose all racism, discrimination and hate, and promote equality. Waverley Borough Council stands alongside all those who are appalled and saddened by the loss of George Floyd in Minneapolis, US. His shocking death highlights the injustices endured by Black people on a daily basis in America, and has also made us face up to the inequalities experienced by the Black communities here in the UK. Now is the time to stand with the Black community and all those who are racially oppressed, just as we always strive to ensure our borough supports and treats everyone fairly, regardless of age, race, gender, or sexual orientation. We are reconfirming our commitments to address inequality and injustice in our own borough. We will consider and reflect on how we can do more to make a difference, and will outline what steps we will take towards this shortly. But in the meantime, let's start this work today. Let's start by us all committing to actively seeing, listening, and educating ourselves on the injustices faced by our residents, officers, and communities across the UK. Let's be role models in empathy, kindness, and standing up for what is right. Let us use our position and privilege to make this borough a fairer, safer, and more equal borough for everyone. And that, I think, will appear on the Waverly website tomorrow. But when I'm talking about change, the change that has to happen in our attitudes, we have changed our attitudes towards many, many things in the past few months. And I think that it will not be a hard thing for us to empathise, even though we are not of the colour or the gender or the sexual orientation of any of those who have suffered discrimination, you can empathise with them, because they don't want sympathy, or actually they don't want words, I wouldn't have thought. They want action. They want people to begin to understand what sort of things they have had to put up with. And hopefully during this next few months, years, things will begin to change even more in that respect. Let me just get back to this. There is change for the good, and there are changes that are going to happen and give us some problems with the way we live in the next few years. It is not possible to plan a future anymore and look at what has happened and use it to decide what will happen. The people who will be most affected by this will be the young. The recession, which was bound to follow this, mean that family and public finances will be severely affected, and the choices in life that are available to the young are going to be more and more limited. For the under 18s, this will be in terms of what is available at home or at school or for their leisure. For the over 18s, it will be, can they get a place at university? Will there be any universities to get a place at? Can they get an apprenticeship? Can they get a job? And can they afford to buy a home? For that reason, the charities I have chosen for this year help young people not only deal with these changes and difficulties, but also try and help in a practical way. We're going to start with the charity that affects the young, or very young, which is Home Start Waverly. This is a charity which supports young mothers and helps them cope with having a baby and dealing with bringing up a baby. Those of you who have children will know that life will never be the same again, and I'm sure that any help will be welcome. They have trained volunteers who will try and make the early years of our young residents a better place. The second is 40 Degrees, which is a centre for young people in Farnham. 40 Degrees is a local charity which offers help and space, safe space for community organisations, which include educational, medical, antenatal and counselling services, to mention but a few. Its principal aim is to provide youth services to young people from 10 to 18 years, whether it means helping young children, young school children make successful transition to secondary school, which can be a difficult place for to contemplate that move for some people is quite a big thing. They have hangout sessions to help improve self-esteem and confidence of young people. They also improve the health of mental health issues and the challenges that are inevitably going to occur at their health hub sessions. And they employed experienced and suitably qualified staff to help with them with this. The importance of listening to young voices can't be underestimated. It provides a chance to steer some of them to a safer place in life. And whether that be in health or with a greater prosperity, we know that they know they have succeeded when one of the young attendees makes the transformation to being an attendee at one of these health hubs or whatever, or clubs, and starts to become a volunteer. The third charity is the Sea Cadets, and in particular, the cadets at TS Swiftsure. they've had a horrible couple of years. After inspection, the leaking roof proved to have asbestos in it and thus needed replacing. During the time the hall was shut down, somebody broke in and took all the kitchen goods which were inside, several of the band instruments, and it meant that the fence, door and stolen goods needed to be replaced. So they badly need help. And they are a very worthy charity from the point of view of the friendship and discipline that young people find in the community, in the unit. I'd like to just read you a story of the CO of the TS Swift Show, which shows how this unit altered the life of one young person. This is Daniel's story, in his own words. I joined the Sea Cadets at 12 years of age. I was very shy and bullied at school, so self-confidence was low. Then after walking through the door of Farnham Sea Cadets, I began to feel accepted into the Sea Cadet family very quickly. I continued to do well, moving through the ranks, gaining more and more experience as the years went on. I stepped away at 17 to use the new confidence and values I have developed, and I went on and focused on my civilian career. I became a confident and driven individual. I managed to get a good career that then allowed me to return to the Sea Cadets as an adult volunteer. Within a month of joining, I became the unit training officer. This role was fundamental in the cadet experience, and I managed to completely change and improve a number of qualifications that the cadets could receive. I then moved to being second in command as an executive officer, with the ambition to one day becoming the commanding officer of the very unit that I was a cadet at many years ago. After completing several training programs and development, I am now super proud to be the commanding officer and have been in charge for nearly 3 years. During that time, we have grown the unit from 50 to 70 cadets and I continue to be determined to give young people in Farnham, Fleet and Aldershot the amazing experience and life-changing development that I once received by being a Sea Cadet. Now, times have definitely changed from the point of view of becoming a mayor. All mayors have charities that they accept, and in the past it has been one of their jobs not only to raise money but to raise awareness of the charities that they've been in. But either of those two things is not possible if you can't get out and about. So what I'm going to do in my mayoral time is look at the internet and try and work out how you can raise money that way. It is quite obvious from seeing the BBC in the mornings that it is possible to do these things. Look at Sir Tom Moore. So I think that working with the Waverly officers and IT department, I'm hoping that we will be able to start with a Just Giving page, and the title of the page will be Youth Charities in Waverly. And the money that goes into that account when they both when they do something or when they don't is going to be divided amongst the charities that I've mentioned so far. It is when you think of what you can do, you know, I know that the Scouts, for example, walked to the moon. And I think that the Sea Cadets have decided that one of the things that they could do was to try and cross the Atlantic. Now, they're going to do this virtually. They're going to run and walk and row and do as many cycle until they can actually start using the lake which is near them. Then they might actually do some of this for real. But they are going to need help from all the members and all their families to try and cover the distance, which is just over 3,000 miles. So if you watch this space on Waverly website will appear how you can donate and also how far they've got at crossing the Atlantic. They have a whole year to do it. So let's hope that at the end of the time, I'll be able to announce a very spectacular amount of money has been raised without them actually having to cross the Atlantic personally. Right, I think that's the end of my speech, but I would like to say thank you to the officers who've made this possible and who will be helping me try and raise this money in the future. I'd also like to say thank you to Alan Turing and to Tim Berners-Lee. You think of what this lockdown would have been like if we hadn't been able to talk to each other using the internet. Their times are completely different now, and both of those people have made it possible to move the way we're moving today. Right, I think we move now on to the business of the day, which is to move to the executive appointments. Leader, would you like to confirm your executive appointments for 2020-2021?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would be delighted to do so. I am pleased to confirm that Councillor Paul Follows will continue as the Council's Deputy Leader. And I'm also pleased to confirm that Councillor David Beeman, Peter Clark, Andy MacLeod, Mark Merriweather, Nick Palmer, Anne-Marie Rossman, Liz Townsend, and Steve Williams will continue as members of the executive, and their portfolios are as shown on page 31 of your agenda. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. I then confirm that this has been noted. Item 11, review the political proportionality of the council and appointments to members to committees.
Madam Mayor, may I speak briefly on this item?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think there's possibly been a bit of a typo in the agenda, in that the recommendations are to note both items, and I think it should read to note item little 1 and for the council to agree item little 2 being the group leaders' nominations. I'm sure that is just a typographical error, which I think possibly Robin Taylor will confirm. But I think if the council's indulgence could be held and that typographical error should be changed, it would save us a lot of grief later. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Lee. That's correct.
Point of order, if I may. I did address this earlier in the week. I understand that it's Councillor Hyman. Point of order, Madam Mayor. Page 8 of our Constitution, part 1 of the Constitution, paragraph 3.3, that tells us that it's the role of full council to approve each year. We must approve the committee allocations. I think that also goes for item 10, the monitoring officer, which we've just done. The monitoring officer will, I'm sure, confirm that. So I think for both items 10 and 11, we should ensure that we do have a vote on it. Perhaps otherwise people won't be entitled to their special responsibility allowances if we don't actually agree the position. So that might make them want to do it. So could the monitoring officer please confirm that the annual council, it is necessary for us to agree the executive appointments, or agree all positions basically, and we do have to approve them. So if Madam Mayor would prefer to perhaps ask whether anybody would wish to vote, if anybody unmutes and speaks, if they wish to vote against or abstain. I'm in favour of both items myself, so it's not a problem. I didn't know about the allocations, but I'm happy. So would you please confirm that, monitoring officer?
So through you, Madam Mayor. No, under the strong leader and executive model of governance, the executive appointments are within the gift of the leader. So they are brought to council for noting rather than for approval.
Right. So there are two recommendations. For the first one was to note the proportional allocation of seats. And the second was to confirm the nominations to the local committee and the Surrey County Council local committee. Do you have a seconder, leader? Do we need a seconder for this? We need to vote on this.
I'm sure I do if we do need to vote, Madam Mayor, yes.
Indeed, the leader does have a seconder if that's required. My understanding was that it was proposed by Mayor and seconded by Deputy Mayor in this particular scenario.
Right. So I propose then that the two recommendations are considered, and we need, does anybody wish to speak against this or abstain? Otherwise, the motion will be carried.
I'm happy to declare, to second that, Madam Mayor.
Does any member wish to vote against it or abstain? No? In that case, the motion is carried. Right, the minutes of the executive. The mayor, that's me, I'm inviting John to introduce the minutes of the meetings held on the 3rd of March and the 12th of May.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
If I may deal first with the 3rd of March. There are no items in part 1 for decision. And I understand I have the same speaker for 2 of the items in part 2. So I will hand back to you for that, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
There are no matters in part 1, so we need the speakers for who was wishing to speak on the part 2 matters. I think it was Councillor Hyman.
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I don't want to take a lot of time on this, but we've been rather short on coronavirus updates over the past 3 months, and I thought it would be nice if just on these 2 items particularly, as it was, sorry, Mike decided to fall over, as it was on the 3rd of March 2020 that climate change strategy was debated by the executive committee. I recall that, and the meeting's minutes notes that Councillor Williams told the meeting about a tie-up with Leeds University and Surrey County Council, and we're going to be taking their strategies forward. So perhaps could we just have a very brief progress report in respect of how much delay can we expect on this, on the Green New Deal, on the public consultation, on going forward to Environment ONS, you know, the process which has been outlined, and looking at a resolution C of that executive meeting in respect of smart targets going to the September executive. Is that realistic? Is that still the plan? So just for those people who think that the climate change strategy should be extra boosted by the coronavirus situation, obviously there are going to be some delays. Could you please tell us whether that's going to be, whether the resolutions were realistic from the 3rd of March executive? Thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. I will, with the Mayor's indulgence, ask the portfolio holder, Councillor Williams, to comment on his earlier statements.
Yes, Councillor Hyman is correct that obviously we didn't anticipate what was going to happen on the 23rd of March when we met as an executive on the 3rd of March. It was stated on that occasion that the that the climate emergency action plan would be open to a period of consultation and further revision, with a view to creating more smart targets, so that we would be in a much better position in the autumn to be able to move forward. Although, of course, we are moving forward on a whole series of actions at the moment. So where are we now? We've opened up the consultation. There is a website which is now available for people to view and comment on our climate change strategy and action plan, which is www.waverly.gov.uk/climate change. And there is an email address there where people can comment, and I would urge members of the public and those who have an interest in this matter to comment on that. Officers are working on sharpening up the targets, developing smart targets on the action plan, and of course we have been reconsidering the priorities in the light of current events. Some of the actions in the climate emergency action plan will actually be able to be moved forward as a result of our building back following the COVID-19 situation, and others will be moved forward. So clearly we do need to reevaluate that. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee will be part and parcel of that discussion. The member group that is continuing to discuss the matter will be part of that discussion, and so will the public consultation responses that we receive. One thing to me is absolutely clear, that we were ill prepared for the emergency which confronted us over recent time, and we had to respond with urgency, and we have to look forward to becoming more resilient to future pandemics. There is another emergency, as I think Councillor Hyman has himself pointed out and recognised, namely the climate emergency, the consequences of which could be far, far more devastating even than that of the current pandemic. And therefore, we are absolutely determined that that there will be as little delay as possible, and that we will be using the opportunity of the very difficult situation and the very tragic situation that we've been living through as an opportunity to review how we build back, so that we build back better, and we take the opportunities that COVID-19 has created for us in order to try to move forward on some of the items in relation to the climate emergency, notably in terms of transport, and we will be seizing the opportunities of funding for cycling and walking infrastructure, pedestrianisation of our town centres, and moving forward in terms of our climate emergency action plan, and several items which are there will be moved forward.
Madam Mayor, can I just alert you that the leader has been kicked off the call very briefly, and so under our established protocol, I just ask that we pause for a few moments while he returns to the session.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Follows. We should do that. No, that's It's gone down. It's gone down.
Perhaps in the interest of time, Madam Mayor, might I propose that Councillor Hyman ask his subsequent question, as I would anticipate the leader will request to delegate the response to that question to the relevant portfolio holder.
Right, Councillor Hyman, do you agree with this?
I think Councillor Follows is referring to the right to come back on part 2 items.
If I may, Councillor Hyman, no, I'm not. My understanding is there isn't a right to come back on part 2 items, although I'll await to be corrected by that by officers. My suggestion was that, as you are also registered to speak on Executive 7219, that if you wanted to pose your question, my anticipation would be that the leader would delegate the response to the portfolio holder anyway, who is still present on the call.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm slightly concerned. I mean, I am just again asking for another coronavirus update in respect of the leisure centres item, and that would be of David Beeman. But I am rather reticent. I know we haven't put the new arrangements through yet, the temporary governance arrangements, and agreed them. So we're sort of slightly ahead of ourselves in a catch-22 position in terms of the constitution. But there is a requirement that we see and be seen, and hear and be so heard. And if we're considering the leader to be a member of the meeting, he cannot hear, and I would not wish to proceed without the leader being present if he is considered. Well, I think the mayor does have a right, actually.
The leader is here.
The leader's now back. All good.
Excellent. So can we confirm that Madam Mayor, that you are resuming the meeting?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. In that case, I don't wish to comment further on item 71/19 of the executive in respect of climate change. As you say, we now move on to item 72/19, as Councillor Follows has intimated, which is the executive debate on the 3rd of March in respect of the leisure centres. And that's on page 52 of your committee papers, your council agenda papers, members. So if you look in the middle of page 52, you'll see I spoke in respect of the leisure centres, and particularly in respect of some improvements which have been trying to get done, minor improvements, not a big bill at all. Paragraph 72.5 in respect of Farnham Skate Park. Outdoor facility, which is not too coronavirus unfriendly, so to speak. Can David Beeman please give us an update? He did say there, you'll see it 72.5, sorry, 72.6. Councillor Beeman assured Councillor Hyman he'd look into this further. I just wondered whether there had been an opportunity, or whether coronavirus has got in the way, whether he can give us an assurance that we will progress this. And also similarly, in terms of the leisure centre improvements, the delivery of the leisure centre development project that was agreed by the executive in March. How are we proceeding with that, and are we going to be proceeding with it? Is it just a delay, or are we going to be taking a different direction, which I think would be perfectly reasonable if that's what's necessary? Obviously the place is closed, nothing's going on, but is it the time to get the works done while it's closed? Should we be expediting it? So just a little coronavirus update on the leisure centres item, if you wouldn't mind, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. Leader, do you wish to come back on that?
Yes, indeed. With your indulgence, Madam Mayor, I would like Councillor Beeman, who was the portfolio holder at the time and did indeed present that report, to clarify what he had to say. And with your indulgence, the portfolio has now moved to Councillor Townsend, and I believe she might like to say something about the future direction. So if you would be so kind, Madam Mayor, I'd like Councillor Beeman first, and then Councillor Townsend.
Right, thank you, Leader. That is perfectly adequate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the intentions of what was said there on that March meeting were in fact meant to be. But of course, things have moved on since then. And in fact, the lockdown was only a few days later than that. So in fact, there was no progress, certainly under my reign of this portfolio, of this particular aspect. And I'd like to hand over to Councillor Townsend, who may wish to update you on any further movements. But I think, to be honest, I think we're in a world now where everything has to be reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam
Councillor
Mayor.
Townsend.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I haven't got an awful lot to add. The project is on hold at the moment. Skate parks are not open under government legislation at the moment, and the project is just suspended, not for now, and there's been no action on it yet. Thank you.
Right, can we move on to 12.2, Leader?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to present the minutes of the executive held on the 12th of May, and I believe I have a seconder.
Pleased to second, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
This executive was the first council meeting to be held under the new regime of virtual or remote gatherings. Interestingly, it was attended by a record number of people, being almost half the council, which was quite a surprise to most of the executive, who are used to looking at fairly empty benches. But hopefully it provided a good forerunner to this meeting, which all councillors are remotely attending. There are two items in part one. The first being the proposed new governance arrangements. When the government enacted the Coronavirus Act 2020, it conferred powers on local councillors to defer their annual meetings and to have any necessary meetings of council or its committees using virtual or remote technology. These powers supersede anything that may have been previously in the council's constitution, standing orders, or rules of procedure. Although this permitted the executive to bring recommendations directly to full council, which many other boroughs in fact did, we felt it would be fairer and more transparent to adhere to the established custom of allowing both the executive and the standards committee to consider certain changes to the constitution. So there are only two particular items here, but you will hear more later from the standards committee. In order to obtain a consensus of how to move forward, we also consulted all the party leaders. For clarity, and for those who are remote from us and do not have a full agenda, I will, with your indulgence, read the recommendations, Madam Mayor. This executive recommends to full council that in principle, remote meetings, at least for the time being, are used sparingly, and that only matters considered to be critical to the council's business be dealt with by way of remote meetings. Any other non-critical business or business as usual items, or items that can be delegated to officers, either through existing or new delegations, or which can be delayed or cancelled, should not necessarily have to be dealt with by remote meetings. All time-limited emergency provisions are to be reviewed at the July council meeting and at any further full council meetings beyond that as required. And part two of that is that the revised schedule of committee meetings outlined in phases 1, 2, and 3, which is in paragraph 4.8 below, which for reference are on pages 67 and 68 of your agenda, are agreed. And a detailed calendar of meetings will be provided to members as soon as possible. For clarity, let me point out that we had hoped to resume normal service a bit sooner than it is now becoming apparent. And hence, when it became clear that remote meetings would be with us for some time, there was no obvious reason to delay our annual meeting any longer, and other events have moved on rapidly, such that some of these measures have almost been superseded by events. However, they are the basic building blocks of the immediate future, and I hope the Council will see the wisdom thereof. At this meeting, the Executive also recommended, in line with earlier comments, proposals for changes to rules of procedure, establishment of planning committees, and revisions to the scheme of delegation be referred to the Standards Committee for its further consideration, as I referred to further, and you will hear more of that later. However, for the moment, I would be happy to hear comments or take questions on these particular items. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Deputy Leader, will you second the recommendations?
I'm happy to second the recommendation. My hand is up also to speak.
Right. Well, as you, I don't know if there are any other speakers, you may as well get stuck in.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to also emphasise a point that the leader made, and we have effectively now nearly resumed a full schedule of meetings. And so the original wording of use sparingly and matters to be considered critical to the council's business, I think the area where we've superseded that in a way has been that all council business has really started to move into the scope of these meetings, which is, I think, excellent. I will also just quickly say thank you to the IT team and Democratic Services who have effectively brought this into fruition in very short space of time. I think it was aided by the fact that we were discussing some of this for informal meetings as far back as January. And it would be very disappointing, I think, if in May 21 the government did not renew these regulations, because it does, I think, give a significant boost to democratic access for people who wish to stand to be councillors, for people who work full-time or have other commitments that might prevent them from getting here. And there's also a substantial environmental benefit from all of this travel that we are now not doing. So my hope is, as none of us wish to rush back into the chamber before it's safe, that we will in the long run be allowed to carry on at least doing versions of this as we see fit. But for now, I think this is proving to work very well, and I just want to thank those officers for the work that's gone into making this happen. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers?
Madam Mayor, I can see Councillor Hyman indicating to speak.
Councillor Hyman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I found this very complicated actually, because we've got this item of recommendations that relate to this item in I think 4 different places in our agenda papers. Obviously, page 5 at the beginning has got the summary. Page 58 has got the executive, the recommendations of the executive, and that I think is what we're speaking to at the moment. Then we've got page 68 has what is hidden within the reference to paragraph 4.8. I think that's the important thing, because I'm not entirely sure what we're actually agreeing to here, and I'd like clarification on that before we go to the vote on it. I do have difficulty with, if we may turn to page 68, please. You will see that under priority meetings, this is the first thing that we are agreeing to do. Executive committee, well, that's been done, so we don't really need to agree it, but it's neither here nor there whether we do. Standards committee, again, that's been done. Extraordinary council, we are agreeing here, I think, to hold an extraordinary council meeting to agree to the required delegations. I don't know what that means, whether ones that we've agreed or whether somebody else just decides that they need them and therefore we are going to agree to them under delegated powers. I certainly don't think anybody would agree to something that loose. Any other emergency powers of delegation to enable the council's efficient response to the pandemic. Again, that's woolly, and I don't think we wouldn't be particularly happy to agree to uncertain things, unless of course that simply means it's going to come to standards before any changes are done. Similarly to the next bullet point at point 3 on page 68 we're on, to formally agree to implement the directions of the government in responding. Are we just agreeing to be alert or something? I really don't know. So we're not going to agree to an extraordinary council anyway, because we're having a sort of hybrid council meeting right now, which is an annual council and ordinary council combined. And we're in that second part of it now, the ordinary council part. So I really don't think that we should be agreeing to all of what is on, in that part of this recommendation to us. The rest of that in phase 2, I think are fairly self-explanatory and not a problem. But I do have a difficulty with why are we agreeing to hold an extraordinary council meeting when we're not actually going to do that anyway, I don't think. And should we change the recommendation accordingly? So if I could have the, please just have the monitoring officer come back on that. I also want to have great concerns. We should delete under, are we also looking at VMPR1, or should we do that at another stage, looking at the government, when we sort of get to page 65, because we're still at page 58 at the moment. This is very confusing for people. If I stop there for a moment, I want to move that we delete the start of VMPR 8.1, Madam Mayor, because it's entirely inappropriate, I think, to for us to have members of the public present in exempt meetings, and that is a get out allowing members of the public to be present in exempt meetings, and we don't want that in there. And VMPR1 is of course out of date, so that makes little difference whether we agree it. So that's my points. Can you please address the issue of why are we agreeing all of 4.8, why it's actually not really appropriate now, and would the leader like to take another look at that under the monitoring officer's guidance? Thank you.
Leader, would you like to come back to that?
Not really, Madam Mayor. Councillor Hyman is well known for going through the minor intricacies of events. I have read the recommendations of the executive to council, and I have elaborated to council the reasons why events have somewhat overtaken us. For Councillor Hyman's benefit, today is in fact the extraordinary meeting. So I suppose on his reasoning, that's neither here nor there. I do not wish to change a word, and I would be grateful, Madam Mayor, if you would put the resolution to council. Thank you.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Right. Does anyone object to taking these two recommendations together?
So, Madam Mayor, Councillor Hyman is seeking to raise a point of order.
Councillor Hyman, would you like to raise your point of order?
Thank you. We are required to act within the Constitution, and the fact that I referred to the Constitution, and if I can refer you to Article 13 of the Constitution, which is good decision making, we need to know what we're agreeing to, and Madam Mayor, you as the conscience of the council, I'm sure, would not want to ask members to agree to something when we have no idea actually what are we agreeing to hold an extraordinary council. This is not an extraordinary council meeting, although the leader says that it is. An extraordinary council is a specific entity in the within the Constitution held for a specific purpose. This is an annual council with some items from ordinary council as well, which is these executive minutes and a couple of other bits. So as it is not an extraordinary council meeting, are we agreeing to have another meeting at all? It will be very simple, rather than just to let our residents think that all this is decided in advance. Nobody ever listens to that council. It's just a rubber stamping exercise every time we watch a meeting. I thought we were going to change that, and I would prefer, if we can, to address this. I would like to move, if you wish to ignore the fact that that some of us wish to make decisions properly and in accordance with the Constitution and Article 13.
Madam Mayor, would it help if I, as there have been various questions, do you want me to just briefly clarify? It is your decision, Madam Mayor, as to
yes,
whether you wish
please, Robin Taylor.
Well, I'd like to move a motion, if I may, before we move on to anything else, because I would like to move that we remove VMPR, the first sentence of VMPR 8, either at this stage or at the later stage when we're doing the minutes of the Standards Committee. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Hyman, I think that since this is a matter of correctness, it either is or isn't possible to do this. I don't think it is in my gift to decide which way it goes. Could the monitoring officer please make a ruling on this? Is it permissible to deal with this? We're taking a lot of time here, when I think that since it's actually the the whole thing is being considered by the Standards Committee and all the recommendations are there laid out, that we vote on this and then move on to the Standards Committee minutes as following. Could I ask you to comment on that?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, were you asking me to comment or
No, I was asking the
Taylor?
monitoring officer to comment.
Fine, thank you.
Can you hear me, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Apologies, just my technology, my end. I'll keep it very brief. There are 2 recommendations for council to agree. They're marked in bold on page 5. The other recommendations that would have been put to council have, as has already been stated, been overtaken by events. So I hope that clarifies briefly, Madam Mayor.
Right, so I will ask again. Shall we, does anybody object to taking these 2 recommendations together so that we can move on to the more important things which are considered in the Standards Committee, which in some ways add to this? Does anybody else object to taking these 2 recommendations together? If there is no objection, I will ask Robin Taylor, the monitoring officer, or what is your exact title, Robin, to put up the poll and ask members to vote on their screens.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Fiona Cameron will put the poll up on the screen now. Thank you.
To agree, the 2 recommendations at remote meeting is set out on page 5 of the agenda.
You submitted it. I don't know first.
For clarification, Madam Mayor, I have submitted a vote and Councillor Keane has a hand raised.
Thank you, Councillor Rivini. I've noted that. Have all members voted who wish to vote? And I'll close the polling. Thank you.
So, Madam Mayor, as you can see, that is 96% in favour of the recommendations. So those recommendations have been agreed.
I will therefore declare that the recommendations are carried as they stand. And we move on to Executive 80/19, Safeguarding Policy for Children and Adults at Risk. Leader, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Only briefly, the recommendation, as you have said, is on page 6. That the Executive recommends to full council that the safeguarding policy for children and adults at risk is adopted. And I believe Councillor Beeman, the portfolio holder, would wish to elaborate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'll be quite brief. The report that is before you represents an updating of Waverly's safeguarding policy for children and adults at risk that was adopted in August 2017. This updating is necessary to reflect changes within Surrey County Council's Children's Services following the Ofsted re-inspection of services for children in need of help and protection in May 2018, where Surrey County Council's children's services were found to be inadequate. Surrey County Council's response has effectively cut back its provision of children's services to the basic level that it legally has to provide, which is understandable. As a consequence, more responsibility will fall on Waverley staff to take whatever action is required when there are indications that children may be at risk. Safeguarding is something one can never get wrong, and it has to be taken very seriously. And I would like to praise the Waverley staff who have taken on these additional responsibilities without any additional resources being able to be allocated to them. It does, however, concern me that Waverly staff have had to take on these additional responsibilities, and I have requested that I should be advised at the earliest possible opportunity should a situation arise where they feel unable to resolve the matter themselves. The policy document was discussed at the meeting of the Executive Committee that was held on the 12th of May, at which various points were raised by Councillors Jenny Ellis and Joy Hyman. Both councillors were subsequently contacted by officers to discuss their concerns, and I understand that all of the concerns raised have been answered. I'm prepared to answer any questions now, but I would, on behalf of the Executive, I would recommend adoption of the revised safeguarding policy for adults and children at risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beeman. Are there any speakers? In that case, can we move on to...
I can see that Councillor Hyman and Councillor Rivini are also indicating to speak.
Oh, right. Councillor Hyman.
No, I was indicating to speak on the previous item actually, and to raise a point of order at the time. Obviously, he hasn't cancelled or whatever. I need to cancel that. I apologise, but I do support this item. I thank the officers very much for looking at the issues raised, and I'm happy with the layout and how it reads. It's very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. Councillor Rivini.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to raise the point, as I have previously, that with Surrey County Council coming off with some Home Start and also reducing the amount of time they have it, for example, in youth clubs and the buildings, this is going to definitely fall much more on our staff. I know that you have similar problems over at Farnham with 40 degrees, for example. Now, I would like to say, please, I was in discussions with our staff prior to the COVID-19, and we need to pick that up because the youth club at Hazelmere is now being funded almost entirely by donations and the town council. So I need to make sure that when we do this, we move forward with our staff to ensure the most vulnerable, i.e. the young people, are safeguarded. It is supposed to fall on Surrey. They seem to have reneged on it, which means that we may have to pick it up. However, in this crisis of money, we need to think very carefully what we're going to do. So we need discussions both at town, borough and county level to try and make sure that our most vulnerable young people are looked after and not abandoned, because I do feel they're being abandoned at this moment in time. Thank you.
Leader, would you like to respond to any of the statements?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. I quite understand Councillor Rivini's fears, and it is going to be difficult for us, but we need to do something to pick this up. So I would be glad if you could put the recommendation to the council.
Right. I will ask for polling to be launched then, please.
Have all members voted as they wish to? If so, I will close the vote.
Fiona, can I just say that Peter is having difficulty getting the polling square up on his screen?
Right.
So he hasn't voted yet.
He hasn't voted, okay. If he'd like to just indicate verbally how he'd like to vote, we can still record his vote.
He's agreed.
He's agreed, okay, thank you. If all other members have voted, I'll end the polling. Thank you.
I think that is well and truly carried unanimously. Right, there are no items, part 2 items registered speakers. So if we could move on to 13, the minutes of the Standards Committee. The Chairman of the Standards Committee, Councillor Rivini, will present the minutes of the Standards Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to propose that the minutes of the 21st May be noted. and I believe Councillor Michael Goodridge is able to second.
I have pleasure in seconding, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
I have
There
a...
are- Yes. Would you like to continue, Councillor Rivini?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a proposed revision. This report proposes a minor revision to the Waverley Member Code of Conduct that updates the descriptions of the 7 Nolan principles to those now used by the Committee on Standards in Public Life. The changes are recommended to Council to approve.
Do you have a seconder?
I believe Councillor Goodridge.
Happy to second again.
Are there any speakers?
Councillor Hyman has his hand raised.
Councillor Hyman.
Thank you, Lady Mayor. It's this. If I can refer you, please, to page 137, where you'll find this in your committee papers. I'm very, very grateful to the Chairman of the Standards Committee, Councillor Rivini, and Deputy Mayor, for bringing this forward. I'd been chasing it since it was deferred at the March 2019 meeting, so it's taken a year to come forward. The problem was, of course, that we already have the Planning Advisory Service and Local Government Association document, Probity in Planning, within the Constitution. That has the updated, improved wording for the Nolan principles of public office in it, and our Code of Conduct has the old one. So we had what you could say is double standards, and so obviously it was important to bring it forwards. There are 2 other things that come with this. There are other changes to our approach, and perhaps some changes also that need making in the Constitution. And there's also a model Code of Conduct, which the Committee for Standards in Public Life are working on, and which has been held up, as the officers quite rightly say in their officer report. That's going to be coming forward in the future. This is much of what needed to come forward a year ago. We're meant to be reporting back to the CSPL shortly to say what differences it has made. If anybody's read it, if you look at I suppose perhaps one of the most important things is the top of page 138, and you can see that under honesty, the definition was holders of public office have a duty to declare any private interest relating to their public duties and take steps to resolve any conflicts in a way that protects the public interest. And it now says holders of public office should be truthful. A lot better, a lot clearer, a far better definition of what honesty actually is. And although I know the officer report to Standards said it's not going to make any difference, I would rather hope it would. And under leadership, of course, you can see there that it says holders of public office should exhibit these in their own behaviour. That's leadership by example. And they should actively promote and robustly support these principles and be willing to challenge poor behaviour wherever it occurs. So wherever people are not abiding by the Constitution, which is what holds the council together and serves our residents and gives our residents their rights and members their rights, we are bound to now stand up against it, whether people like it or not. And it does mean confrontation, of course, which we have to do carefully, but nevertheless, we do have to confront the issues. So I'm very happy to support this. And I would recommend to the rest of the council, please, just to agree to this part of the of this item and bosh it through, because it's all clean, it's all good, and the typos have been corrected, and it all looks very good to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. Councillor Rivini, do you wish to speak?
I would just like to say to the standards, it seemed very straightforward now. I think this is a very good revision. I know there is more to be coming, and we'll look at that in due course. Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you could ask for the polling, please.
I think Councillor Follows is indicating to speak, Madam Mayor.
Sorry, very briefly.
Councillor Follows.
Very briefly, Madam Mayor, thank you. I just also wanted to say that I think most of us would subscribe to these principles and take serious action on them, irrelevant of whether they're documented on a piece of paper or not. and because that's the sort of people that we are, and that's our duty and our role. As Councillor Rivini has mentioned, there will be a part 2 to this in the future, but I think, as you say, this needs to be approved, I think, with all due haste.
Right, thank you, Councillor Follows. Shall I then move? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? If not, could I ask for the polling to be launched? Fiona, Peter is agreeing as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If everyone has now voted, I will end the polling and show the results.
Once again, unanimous agreement, so the recommendation is carried. Shall we then move on to STD 2619 virtual meeting procedure rules? Councillor Rivini.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report proposes a set of virtual meeting procedure rules that will apply in meetings being held with members attending remotely via Zoom. The principle of remote attendance and the requirements that have to be satisfied for members to be in remote attendance are set out in regulations approved by Parliament. These procedures rules set out how they are applied at Waverly, where they conflict with our normal procedure rules. These virtual meeting procedure rules will automatically fall away on the 7th of May 2021, when the regulations that allow remote attendance at meetings expire. If approved, the virtual meeting procedure rules will be inserted into Section 4 of the Constitution. There is additional practical guidance for members and officers on using Zoom for meetings, which may be updated from time to time. The Standards Committee recommends the virtual meeting procedure rules to Council. I believe I have a second on Councillor Goodridge.
Happy to second again.
Are there any speakers?
Councillor Follows is indicating, Madam Mayor.
Councillor
Follows. Councillor Follows.
Councillor Follows. Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Notwithstanding my previous comments as to the usefulness of these regulations and some of the things that it enables, I think the procedural rules are extremely good. They're very helpful to people who've not used the technology before, and they will hold us in good stead for the future, even if we are restricted back to doing this for informal meetings. I think they're an excellent guide. And I will just add, as it's the first time we've used it tonight, I think that new voting system is absolutely excellent. It's very clear to people what they're doing. It's very transparent for people watching it on the webcast. And I just want to commend officers for bringing that forward, because it's a really excellent addition to our virtual meetings. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers?
Councillor Hyman is indicating, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hyman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I've referred to this earlier. If I can refer members to page 154 of the committee papers. Actually, first of all, if we start off page 151, the virtual meeting procedure rule 1, which is being brought in, you'll see that is no longer applicable. It really doesn't matter whether we apply it or not. I think it doesn't look particularly good on us to be agreeing something that really is pointless, but nevertheless, that also makes it pretty pointless objecting to it in a way, I suppose. I just rather we be doing what we need to do. But a VMPR 8 on page 154 states about in respect of confidential issues, it says where the technology is available, the Democratic Services Officer or meeting facilitator will ensure there are no members of the public in remote attendance accessing the meeting and able to hear and see. And the point that I'm trying to make here is that having that caveat in the first 5 words of that sentence, where the technology is available, allows for people to be part of the meeting. I really don't think that there's any reason for us to have those 5 words in. They confuse it and they allow for people to be part of the meeting. I don't know exactly how a democratic services officer or facilitator will ensure that nobody who is not entitled to is watching a meeting or whatever. I would refer members to paragraph 8.2 there, which says any member in remote attendance who fails to disclose there are in fact persons present and not entitled will be in breach of their members' code of conduct responsibilities. Harsh, but of course absolutely right. We have to personally take responsibility for making sure that no one is there for the benefit of the democratic services officer and meeting facilitator. But those 5 words, I'd like you, Madam Mayor, actually to move, because if I put it forward, then it would be far better for you to do it. Where the technology is available is something which we should not have written in there, because if members have agreed that it's exempt, we cannot allow public access, and we can't allow that to be in there, whatever the reason. So if the feed cannot be prevented, then we don't debate the issue. That's the way I think most members would feel about this. So I would move the first 5 words of the second paragraph, 8.1, be deleted, and the rest of it be agreed as it is, Madam Mayor. I don't know whether I've got a second or whether you'd like to move that. Would you like to move it, or would you like me to move it myself, Madam Mayor?
I would like you to move it yourself, Councillor Hyman.
Okay, I move that the first 5 words be where the words "where the technology is available" be removed from paragraph 8.1. I think that's probably simple enough. And would ask that somebody with a brain does second that for us.
Madam Mayor, I ask for a point of personal information to request that the monitoring officer explain why that's not necessary.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I suspect that this is actually a confusion in the text. My suggestion would be it should say using the technology available rather than where the technology is available. I think the intention was just to refer to the technology that we have available, which may be Zoom or maybe something else. But what this is trying to affect is saying that we will use the technology that we have to make sure that members of the public and press are removed from the meeting in the same way that in normal times we would ask them to leave the room.
Right. Councillor Rivini, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, I'd be happy to use the monitoring office phase of using that and delete the word "where the technology" and be replaced.
Right. Could you read that again?
That's using
what it now reads.
It would now, on the 3rd line, 8.1 on page 154, it would read using the technology that is available.
Right. Shall I ask for do I need to have everybody's agreement to this, or can we just go ahead and vote?
Madam Mayor, if you don't mind, I will withdraw my motion. I will second Councillor Rivini's motion, and we would need to, I mean, it's very minor. I'm not sure whether the monitoring officer thinks we should be allowed to change that without taking a vote, if that's the easiest thing. But as I say, I would be perfectly happy to withdraw my motion and second the minor amendment that Councillor Rivini has done. If it's necessary to do so, it may be sufficient to notice in the minutes. I don't know. Perhaps take advice. Thanks.
Madam Mayor, I noticed that Daniel Bainbridge, Borough Solicitor, has his hand up, so it may be sensible to hear from him before we go any further with it.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I just check that you can hear me?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. So I think if you changed it to using, I think it suggests that there will always be the ability for the Democratic Services Officer to remove somebody from the meeting to ensure that there is no public access to the exempt session. But I think, in my view, it should stay as it is. Also, the phrasing of where the technology is available kind of reflects the remote meetings regulations, which talk about where practicable for meetings to take place remotely and for things to happen within those remote and electronic meetings. So I would suggest you leave it as it is, because it does you're never going to be able to guarantee that a democratic services officer will be able to remove somebody, or extending it further, somebody who may be in a member's home but the democratic services officer cannot see, in that exempt session. So I think it goes as far as it can do in explaining the Fiona and others' abilities to remove people from an exempt session, if that helps. But obviously, it's up for council to consider. But that's my advice.
Right, back to you, Councillor Rivini. Are you happy to leave it as it is?
I would prefer to take the as it is, yes, please. On the advice of our solicitor, yes, please. I will be comfortable with it to remain.
Madam Mayor, I think Councillor Goodridge is also indicating to speak.
Councillor Goodridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and can I add my congratulations to you as becoming Mayor, as the first opportunity of speaking. When I was Mayor in 0102 of the borough, you were involved as Deputy Mayor of Farnham, and we got to know each other quite well then. So far as this item is concerned, I hear what our Borough Solicitor has to say, as well as our monitoring officer, head of democratic services. I think if we're going to use the wording as there at the moment, and to cover the point that Borough Solicitor says, would it not be a good idea to, if we're going to use the where the top technology is available words, that we say after meeting facilitator will use their best endeavours to ensure that. You can never guarantee anything, but the principle is we'll use our technology to use our best endeavours to ensure that there is nobody at the meeting that shouldn't be. It's a pity that Councillor Hyman didn't raise this at the Standards Committee at the time, because I don't think he raised this objection to PR8 then, which is a shame. But I think if we're trying to get the wording, I personally didn't think that using the words as printed implied that people could attend when they were excluded. But if Councillor Hyman thinks it is, then I think saying that they'll use their best endeavours to ensure that no members of the public attend our meetings would solve the solution, and I'd be grateful for the Borough Solicitor comments on that point.
Yes. Would you like to comment, Borough Solicitor?
I'm happy to, Madam Mayor. Yes, that would work. I think that reflects what I just said in terms of democratic services abilities, physical abilities, and in a virtual setting.
Right, thank you. Councillor Hyman, are you happy with that?
Perfectly. Be happy to propose or second, withdraw my original and change the wording, whatever you'd like to, whatever you'd prefer to do. If Councillor Goodridge, thank you for his help, would like to propose that, I would be happy to second him. Thank you.
I so propose.
And Councillor Rivini, is that?
I say second.
I'd be happy with that. Yes, it does show that the officers will try their best to do it, which is what we're seeking. So if the technology is there, they will try and ensure it to their best of their endeavour. I would agree with that changing.
Right. In that case, could I ask for the polling to be launched?
So if members would like to cast their vote, and that is to vote in favour of those procedure rules with that amendment that's just been proposed.
Again, Councillor Peter Marriott was putting up his hand.
Thank you, that's noted. And if everyone has voted now, I will end the polling. Thank you, members.
Right. Right. Yes, the recommendation has been carried with the changed wording. That concludes, I think, the work for the minutes of the Standards Committee. Apart from on that particular topic, I think we now move on to the temporary arrangements for the new planning committees. Councillor Rivini.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. It is part of the standards. This report sets out proposals for the establishment of a temporary basis of 2 new planning committees, Western and Eastern, to replace the Council's existing 5 planning committees in order to streamline planning committee decisions, making arrangements whilst resources are stretched due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, there are, as you can see from your from the agenda, that there are 4 points. I would prefer to take them as one if we could do a poll. Is there anybody who would disagree with this?
Yes, we didn't debate item 4, number 4, if you recall, at the standards meeting, Councillor Rivini.
In that case, we'll have to take them one at a time. So the first one, the arrangements have been considered very carefully by the Standards Committee. The committee is clear that these are temporary measures and Council will decide when these arrangements should cease to operate and we revert to the 5 planning committees.
Are there any speakers on that point? Right, shall we move to point 2, Councillor Rivini?
Point 2, the Standards Committee
Apologies,
recommends...
Madam Mayor, I can see Councillor Follows indicating to speak.
Oh, Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to do a catch-all for all of the recommendations. I think we had a very in-depth discussion on this subject at Standards. I think it clocked at over 60 minutes on this subject alone. That was following a significant amount of debate internally by the political groups and independents on the council, just so that everybody was happy that this was reflecting the needs of the council. I think the recommendations that Standards agreed are very sound. They've got general buy-in from everybody on the council, I believe, and for good measure, an additional review by the Standards Committee itself, I believe in September, was also added to the recommendations to ensure that there was another check as to how well they were going, and effectively a check on their workload as well. So I think that we probably could have taken these together, but obviously that's the way these things go. But I think these have been discussed, and generally the buy-in is pretty solid across the council at this point, would be my interpretation.
Thank you, Councillor Follows. Shall we move to section 2, the arrangements?
Apologies, Madam Mayor, to interrupt. Councillor Hyman and Councillor Goodridge are both indicating to speak.
On the first one or the second? On the first point or the second point?
I'm afraid I don't know.
Madam Mayor, it's what Councillor Follows has said is true. There was an hour spent on talking about this, but we didn't really debate number 4. I have no problem at all. I don't think anybody, but correct me if I'm wrong, we could have a vote to find out. I don't think anybody would have any problems with the first 3, because I think it's been debated by, I know it's been debated in detail by the Conservative group. I haven't been told of anybody else who is concerned about it, other than perhaps that it may be permanent and they'd like it to be temporary, but that's an argument for another day. The issue under number 4, Roman numerals 4, at the bottom of page 155, which is where we are, it states where an application could be decided under delegated authority where it not be there not be a connection with a member or officer, they may be delegated to the head of planning and economic development and relevant ward members, such special delegation expiring with the planning committee arrangements. I see no need for that. We have certainly, as far as I understand, the first Western meeting that, if we agree this, which we should, at the first Western meeting, we'll probably have an item on it that is a councillor's application for an extension. I don't think there's any problem with us bringing forward those applications which apply to the committees. And I think it's an absolutely vital part of the checks and balances in this council, that where we are granting or refusing planning consents which are connected to members or connected to staff, then we must be totally transparent. And what we're saying with this, Roman numerals little 4 is the residents will have to put up with it. We're going to reduce our standards here, even though we don't need to. We're going to be less transparent. Personally, I think the officers would prefer us to make the decision, because it takes the responsibility away from them on something which could be controversial. So I would object to number 4. We didn't have time to discuss it at the Standards Committee meeting, and that's why I abstained on it. I would recommend to others actually that we don't need to agree number 4, and that we would look far better as a council if we didn't. So I am going to myself vote against number 4, and I encourage others to too. Thank you very much.
Right, we seem to be leapfrogging over things. So you have no problems with 1, 2, or 3. Do we need to, does anybody wish to speak to section 4? Or shall we take 1, 2, and 3 before that?
Madam Mayor, I can see Councillor Goodridge and Councillor Cossa both indicating to speak.
Yes, Councillor Goodridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was my suggestion that we had a review on the Standards Committee in the September, because however well one tries to draft temporary regulations, there are always occasions when you've forgotten something and need to make an improvement. I think it is the will, certainly of those that I've spoken to, and also was the view on the Standards Committee, that this was a good thing to do as a temporary situation, and that the sooner we could get back to doing planning the old way in person and having 5 committees, the better. I'm happy with what we agreed, and all 4 of them. The fact that Councillor Hyman didn't actually raise it at the Standards Committee, perhaps the will to live was starting to ebb a bit after 2.5 hours of the Standards Committee, but nevertheless he didn't raise it, and I personally think it's a sensible thing to do. There is the transparency. It goes to the chairman and vice chairman of the planning committees to look at it, but usually members' applications and officers' applications are ones where there's no controversy at all about it, and we've got so many planning matters that we've got to decide on in the forthcoming weeks and months. To weed out 1 or 2 members and officer ones would be, in my view, a good idea. So I'm happy on all 4 of the recommendations, and would emphasize that in September we'll have a look. So if anybody's got any problems with how it's working on the 2 Eastern and Western planning committees between now and the beginning of September, I'm sure the chairman of the Standards Committee or myself would be, or Robin Taylor, would be happy to receive those queries, and we can then deal with them. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Well, thank you, Councillor Goodridge. Are there any other speakers for this?
Yeah. I can see, Madam Mayor, I can see Councillor Cossa, Councillor Coburn and Councillor John Gray.
Councillor Coburn. Councillor who was first, sorry? I don't have a list in front of me. Councillor Cossa.
Councillor Cossa, Councillor Coburn, Councillor John Gray, and I think Councillor Blishen as well is also indicated.
Right. Councillor Cossa.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and my turn, and sincerely to give you my congratulations as well on your appointment as Mayor. I just really wanted to raise a question as much as anything else about the timescale and temporary nature of these arrangements. I'm certainly happy with what's been proposed, but I'm happy on the basis that those arrangements are and should be temporary. In that sense, I suppose I just had a little bit of a reservation about the recommendation in paragraph 3 that it is not until December that the council will have a chance to review these things. I understand Councillor Goodridge's point that standards will have a look at this in September to maybe do some tweaking, but it seems to me we have already committed ourselves via this resolution to saying, well, we're going to do this for at least 6 months, and then even if we're not sure, and I don't know how long this is going to go on, it probably is optimistic to think we could come out of this sooner, but I'd like to have seen something that gave us a greater flexibility to revert to those arrangements which we have had in place for some time and most of us would prefer, rather than saying, well, we're not actually even going to look at it until December. So it's a question, I suppose, to the chairman of the Standards Committee or other members of that committee. Why December? Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Rivini, would you like to?
Yes, the idea is to tweak or look at tweaks in September so we can recommend it to full council for changes. Obviously, this is new ground. We believe it will work, and I'm fully behind the 4. And I would certainly say that, as far as I'm concerned, of course, that the discussions between the chairman and head of planning should be transparent before any delegation is made. So I'd be happy to stick to this, and as I say, have a look at it in September and then recommend to the council, the first council after that date, to actually get it in front of their for a ruling.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Rivini. Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, like everybody else on this council, you know, I am instinctively very protective of the old system, but, you know, we have to accept that we are where we are. We have a planning system that has slipped a little bit behind because of the unusual circumstances we're in. And we have 4 proposals here which have a limitation, which seek to actually make a difference to what we can do in the planning department. So I understand people's reservations, and I certainly understand reservations about number 4. But given where we are, and given the fact that we must serve our borough, we must make these planning decisions, it isn't fair to anybody to delay planning decisions, especially relatively simple ones. And so, although, as I say, instinctively, you don't like change, you certainly want member input into planning. It's in many ways, most of what we enjoy doing is involved with planning, but we have an incredibly difficult situation at the moment. We're working with extreme difficulties. The officers have great restrictions, and we need to get the whole thing moving. And I think the Standards Committee has come up with a suite of recommendations that are, for a temporary measure, very acceptable. And I think we just have to accept that this is where we are. This is one way out of it, and we have to give it our full support and make it work. Because if we don't, then obviously we're not going to have the success we want. So I think there are times in life when you have to compromise. I think this particular era is a time when we have to make huge compromises. And this one is a relatively minor compromise to achieve what we need to do for our residents in the borough. So I am fully supportive, understanding the reservations, but fully supportive of these temporary measures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let me add my good wishes to you on your appointment. Just a minor point. I agree with the principles and sat on the Standards Committee, but I have a question which probably I should have raised at the standard meeting, as Councillor Goodridge suggested, but I think it was a long meeting. What happens if one of those people that it's delegated to is actually the applicant? It's in the drafting here, but you know, there's something like 7 or 8 people potentially that could be involved in there. It's the way it's wording, it basically, they can go ahead and they can make the decision, but I would just want it clarified that anyone who's got an application can't be involved in the discussions under 4. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. Councillor Rivini, would you like to come back on that?
Yes, I would certainly accept that point. It wasn't raised. I didn't think about that particular circumstance. Perhaps you ought to ask the borough solicitor, he's happy with that, to include that within the wording, or the monitoring officer, whoever is applicable.
Yeah. Monitoring officer, are you willing to speak on it, or should we speak to the solicitor?
I don't mind. I'm happy to comment, Madam Mayor. I mean, I think, you know, absolutely common sense would apply in that situation, and where the applicant was somebody listed within the scheme of delegation, then, you know, as part of staff's own code of conduct and the advice that we give them on a standing basis, they would not be involved in agreeing their own planning application. So we would deal with it on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, monitoring officer. Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do feel obliged just to make 2 very short points. Councillor Costa doesn't speak for everybody here when he says that everybody loved the 5 planning committees. That isn't true. Plenty of people don't love the 5 planning committees. I'm personally wedded to efficient, representative and inclusive decision making, and I'm not personally of the view that the 5 committee structure actually delivered that. But that's not a debate for now. What is a debate for now is that that system is ill prepared to deal with the situation that we're dealing with under COVID. And so this is a reasonable compromise that effectively all of the groups came to in order to make sure that we passed planning applications. Again, I remind councillors that we didn't really want to be doing this. We actually wanted to be dedicated to community support. The government are the ones who are insisting that we carry on with this. This is a reasonable set of things to get us through that. But there is a sunset clause in there, and there is a review period that will, I think, mitigate some of the issues that members had during the original discussions, and I think provide appropriate checks and balances into the system. But again, a system that we didn't want to have to be doing at this time. So for considering where we are, I think this is the best that we can currently do.
All right, thank you, Councillor Follows. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As the chairman of the Euston Planning Committee, if it is approved in the next few minutes, and I can undertake that I'll report back each month at each meeting on applications which have been dealt with under Little 4, so that the members of the committee are aware of what's been done in their name under that new regulation.
Well, thank you, Councillor Cole. Are there any other speakers?
Madam Mayor, I think Councillor Blishen still indicating to speak, and also Councillor Beeman.
Right, something, Councillor Blishen.
You're muted, I'm afraid, Councillor Blishen, so we can't hear you.
Right, thank you, Madam Mayor, and congratulations on your appointment. Paragraph number 4. I think there's a typo in the second line. It says with a member of officer. I think that should be a member or officer, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
And towards the end, it mentions ward members. So there is some local involvement, which I think is a very, very good thing. So it hasn't been taken entirely out of the local people's hands, because the ward councillors are involved as well. So I think that's quite solves the problem. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Blishen. Councillor Beeman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to echo what my counterpart in the East has just said, Councillor Cole, and says I too would be more than willing to report what comes forward, which is under alleged delegated powers, and the fact there are going to be involvement of ward members as well in these decisions. And in fact, this is an advancement from the original proposal. In fact, I think originally it was only going to be the chairman and the head of planning. So I think that we've already made certain steps to ensure that there's transparency.
All right, thank you, Councillor Beeman. Councillor Rivini, would you like to wind up?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I think, as it's laid out on there, I think we're all in agreement. There may be very minor things that we can tweak in September and I've said previously we will bring back to full council for any ratification. As Councillor Follow said, this is unusual times. We are trying our best to make sure that planning works under the government rules, and so I believe this is the best for Waverly and people submitting planning to go ahead. We have a backlog, we need to clear it. These planning committees will be sitting once a fortnight. It is a lot of work for the councillors to get through all these. I would recommend these for approval, so may I ask for a poll, please?
Now, oh, okay.
So
and this is for all 4.
There are 4 questions there, so you may vote separately on different questions.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
Yes. And Councillor Peter Marriott is agreed.
Thank you.
All 4.
I'm Councillor Keane is also voting for all 4.
Thank you. Has every member now voted? So I'm going to end the polling now. And the results show those votes have been carried.
Yes, I can only see 3 of them on my screen, but all 4 will be carried, yes?
Yes.
So the recommendation as they are written have been carried.
That's correct.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I thank you, Councillor Rivini, Deputy Mayor.
Madam.
The minutes of the Audit Committee. Oh, right.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. I was unable to speak at that during that item because once the thing to allow us to vote had come up, I was not able to speak in order to ask what was the question. When that comes up, it doesn't tell us what we're actually agreeing to.
I think you're agreeing to all 4.
So I thought it said number 1, and I thought we were doing them separately. I think you've actually misunderstood, and I think that's the problem here. We do expect some problems with the new system, but
point of order, Madam Mayor. Point of order. Sorry, my apologies, but point of order, Madam Mayor, in regards to Councillor Hyman's point, for me that popped up as a voting box with 4 very distinct votes in it, each of which you could vote on separately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Precisely. Agreed.
On my laptop, it certainly wasn't. So I only had the 1 and couldn't speak and ask. But don't worry, it just means that I was unable to vote on.
Can I make a suggestion, please? Madam Mayor, if Councillor Hyman feels he hasn't been able to vote, that's absolutely fine for Councillor Hyman to confirm now the way he wished to vote on all 4 parts. We can record that and add it to the other votes.
Right, Councillor Hyman, how do you vote on number 1?
I think I made it clear, Madam Mayor. On number 1, I was voting in for 2 and 3. Number 2 and 3, I vote in favour. Number 1, I think I did electronically vote for it because then I thought, well, I've got to vote for it, even though I don't know whether this is all 4 or just one of them. And number 4, against. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hyman. Is that recorded?
That's been recorded, and if Councillor Hyman wishes, I can record that specifically in the minutes that he has voted against the final one of those 4 recommendations.
Yes, thank you. I don't because it's contrary to Article 1.3 and Part 2 of the Constitution, and we are bound to uphold the Constitution. Thanks.
Right. Are you happy that you have now voted?
Yeah.
Councillor
Thanks.
Hyman? Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, right. Should we move to the minutes of the audit committee?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I shall use the Mayor's iPad to save having to reconfigure our two iPads to stop this interference between the two. I'm pleased to present the minutes of the Audit Committee. Against a background of changes in legislation, the financial accounts for the financial year 2018-19 for the Council were submitted in time by the end of July 2019 with no significant issues to report. Financial accounts for the 2019-20 year are currently being reviewed by our external auditors, Grant Thornton, and ordinarily would have been prepared for formal approval before the end of July. Due to the impact of COVID-19 on local authorities, the government has extended the deadline to 30th of November this year. COVID-19 has not had a significant impact on our finances as at 31st of March 2020, with a relatively low loss of income from car parks and leisure centres, which were closed down before the end of March. Although the accounts are not yet finalised, we anticipate that last year's budget will be balanced. The current financial situation is much more interesting, much more stressing. Car parks and leisure centres remain closed, and there is no guarantee that income from these will return to pre-COVID levels. Grant Thornton are working with us on the risk aspect that will have an impact on the coming year's activities. Resetting this year's budget will be a major task, and updates will be reported to the Executive and the ONS committees in due course. An aspect of the impact of COVID-19 on council services and undertakings is the council's view of risk and what is acceptable across the range of investment and operational strategies. The Audit Committee will be addressing this issue in the coming year. That completes my report, Madam Mayor. Can I move that the minutes be noted? And do I have a seconder?
Yes, Jerome Davidson accepts. Very happy to recommend.
There are no part one matters for council consideration. Are there any speakers on part two matters?
That's my name. Right. Are there any speakers on part two? I think Councillor Hyman, you had.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I've read in the papers, and the Audit Committee meeting was actually a very important one. And the first item on the two, which is 4819, which I indicated to speak on, so that's on page 172 of your papers, is in respect of the air quality management investigation outcome and findings. And I would recommend that members, whether new or old, go back to those documents for the Audit Committee meeting and have a look at that report, because it is quite a comprehensive report. There are some issues in there which do need further discussion, but the point that I made at the audit meeting was that this is not over. We do have a serious issue here with as we know, our air quality officer back in 2010, a previous air quality officer back in 2010, identified that the proposals for Farnham's Town Centre, which Crest and Surrey County Council and apparently Waverly wish to go ahead with in the coming months, that there had been no assessment made, and that in effect that Crest had falsified the transport assessment and EIA. And these are very, very important issues in respect of audit and governance, and I do raise them all the time, and I have done for the past 15 to 20 years, because this has certainly been going on 15 years. So this is something which is not over, and I urge all members who feel responsible for the standards that this council should be upholding, does take a good look at this, and I will send information round to them if they wish to the evidence which has been put forward over the past 15 years and what the air quality officer said about it at the time. So that's very important to me that we follow that up very soon before major mistakes are made in relation to Waverly. And on the external audit plan, I'll move on to that because I assume I'm the only person speaking on this item and the following one, which is 49/19, minute 49/19 at the bottom of page 173, and then over. I just recommend that members read through that item there. The issue here, of course, is that by continuing to defy the Sweetman ruling and following Natural England strategy, that's an approach which has been confirmed unlawful by the ECJ, we're needlessly incurring significant costs and harming the environment, but audit's issue is the significant costs to the public purse that we are needlessly incurring in losing appeals. We don't need to, and we really do need to address this properly. And again, that's something which we're not going to be able to do at this meeting tonight, but I do suggest that members read this, and I will write to members following the meeting over the next week or so to take this forward, because it's got to be sorted by audit. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, thank you, Councillor Hyman. Councillor Marriott, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Hyman. I've noted your comments, and perhaps we can take these further offline.
Right. Is that the conclusion of the minutes?
That's the conclusion of the minutes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. There are no matters to be considered in exempt, and therefore this meeting is concluded. I would say thank you to everyone, and I think the technology held up remarkably well. And I'm hoping that having a learner mayor this time, I've learned a little bit already, and hope that it'll be better next time.
Madam Mayor, can I just add my congratulations for becoming mayor, and I look forward to working with you over the next year and beyond. Thank you.
Yes, thank you too.
And Madam Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Madam Mayor, before we move to item 15, which we've done because you've now closed the meeting, with your indulgence, and congratulations on steering us through this very unique meeting. It couldn't have been easy, but very well done. You've done a sterling job. With your indulgence and with my earlier haste to make sure I mentioned every champion out there, there was one that I missed. And with your indulgence, if I can quickly just mention now, it was to Smart Cranley, who are facilitators of some of the best work that goes on in our village. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and congratulations on your post.
Well, thank you, Councillor Forashevsky. I shall miss you.
I shall miss you too. Take care.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Well done, Penny.
Well done, Penny. Well done, Penny. Great work, Penny. Thank you.
Well done, Penny.
Congratulations. Well done, Penny.
Yeah.